Hello everybody, and welcome back to the ASUS ROG YouTube channel, and welcome back to the actual second part of our kind of ASUS and X79 series overview. At this point, what we're going to go ahead and start talking about is actually what ASUS is doing in terms of actually its X79 series motherboards and how they can actually benefit the X79 chipset as well as the Sandy Bridge E CPU in itself. And we're bringing back Fumio from actually part one of the actual overview to go ahead and give us some questions as well as actually his perspective at what things are being incorporated. So welcome back. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so we have all the X79 line out there. A lot of these new stuff. We also we're the motherboard vendor. So can you just briefly tell us what's new about how we lay out one for the X79 or LGA 2011 socket?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a lot of considerations to keep in mind. Of course, with the significantly larger socket, and also us kind of focusing on wanting to maximize the quad channel support, we were taking up a lot more of the board. And this actually takes a lot of engineering on our part, because when you talk about the actual complexity of this type of trace layout, there's a lot to deal with. You're talking about actually the traces that you not only have to lay out for the DRAM here, but then you have traces actually for here, and then also the back I/O. So there's a lot of complexity, and we need to be able to design an efficient mechanism that helps to ensure, for one, solid reliability, good overclocking, not only in 4-DIMM but also in 8-DIMM configurations, but as well as how do we actually manage the heat. So that is a lot of different variables to take into consideration, but what we all are happy about is definitely that across the range for our launch series boards, all of them are showcasing 8-DIMM support. So going down from our standard board, this one being our Pro, so our standard is not showcased here, but then all the way up to the R4E, we're talking 8-DIMM. So the great thing about that is when you talk about the flexibilities, here generally would be 4 DIMMs, maybe 16 gigabytes. Now you can go ahead and even add another 4 and be talking about 32 gigabytes as we're showcasing our system back there. There's an example. We've got DDR3 1600 with the Corsair Vengeance. Here we've got some GTX modules from Corsair for the more performance-oriented enthusiast overclockers. And even for the really high-end guys that can take advantage of it, you could of course go 8 DIMMs and 64 gigabytes, right? Now, one of the other concerns though is when you start talking about adding this much memory to the system and also having the complexity of everything, you need to ensure good quality power delivery. You want to be also to have the control and flexibility to be able to define parameters. One of the kind of key hallmarks that we had on 1155 was our digital power design, our Digi Plus VRM. And now for us, this is actually the 7th generation of boards that we're putting into the market with digital power control. So as you're aware, this is something we've been seeing internally from us for quite some period of time.
Yes.
And we're very happy about maintaining this and taking everything that we've learned from generation to generation of board and being able to put that in for X79. So this gives us a lot of advanced functionality in terms of how we can work with the CPU in terms of controlling like OCP parameters for current, switching policies for the actual VRM and the phase array, the actual loading policies, whether they're temperature or they're current based. A lot of really cool things that we of course have more detailed in the OC guide and in the forums. But this comes into consideration when you're talking about the actual layout, because you're packing the VRM now to just pretty much one key point here. So the drivers, the MOSFETs, the chokes are all just right underneath this one central heatsink. Whereas on 1155, we were able to spread this out quite a bit more. Exactly. So you've got your phases here, so pretty much the chokes, the drivers, and MOSFETs spread out across. Where here you're kind of packed in, right? So it is key, definitely like in the system that we've got back here, you want to ensure great airflow, So we actually have 220 millimeter fans set to downward fire across the memory, across the foreground of the VRM heatsink, and also to the back plane, and then we exhaust outwards. But that's one of the consistent hallmarks across all our boards, is that all of them not only have this high quality digital power delivery, our dual intelligent processors 3, for both the CPU and for the actual 2 DRAM banks. So we can control all the parameters, try to make things run as efficiently as possible or be able to push as much as possible. But we've also gone with a really efficient power design to help try to give the best temperature performance we can. So all the boards feature high quality VRM heatsink. And on top of that, we're using actually some new driver packages. We're actually using what's called a dual End Mosfet.
Okay.
This actually includes the high side and the low side MOSFET in a single package. Helps us to actually minimize on space that's used in the board, but also gives us actually a lower operating temperature. But as opposed to actually some of the competitors, we actually keep the driver independent of that. Instead of unifying it under what's referred to as a Dr. Moss solution. And that's just because they're not as effective at being able to handle the high levels that are required, especially as you really start to push the platform. So we get still a great efficiency, but we get the high power delivery by going with our tweak design in terms of digital PWM. We have the Digi Plus DRAM, and then we've got these new MOSFET. We have this new choke package that are consistent across all our boards. Okay. So that's a big plus. Now, taking a look at some of the other kind of consistent hallmarks, is just general solid design. When we have to think about aspects of what makes sense for a user, we did a lot of this with 1155. Yes. But now what we're trying to do is keep these same kind of design consistency points. So we've got really good PCIe layout. Every single one of the boards at the minimum has dual slot spacing.
As you can see here.
Exactly. So we have that here, and as I'm sure you being a gamer, that's key, right? Because you want good airflow.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's one of the nice benefits that you're going to have. So you could go ahead and run dual slot card here, another dual slot card here, still have the space in the center to have airflow, or even to be able to add an expansion card. And even if you stepped up to doing like 2 triple slot cards, it's also going to be a great option because you could go ahead and put 2 triple slot cards without actually any overhang. So that's great because you maximize the screen real estate of the actual board. So where you're not necessarily having to have overhang, where some chassis don't have that kind of additional slot. Exactly. So we look at it from that perspective. We've got the dual slot spacing, we've got the optimal placing for either dual slot card configuration or even triple slot card configurations, and that's going to be present across all the boards. Okay. So that's a cool plus. Another one is, of course, standard things that just make sense, like all the boards are right angles, serial ATA. And we want to do that because, as you know, some of the newer GPUs on the market, they can get pretty long in terms of their length. So we want to be able to make sure that that card isn't going to be impacted by the actual SATA if they were maybe put in an odd vertical fashion or rotate in a certain way. So we keep them right angle. That also allows for clean cable management, right? It's a small touch, but it makes sense in terms of not only the PCIe layout, but also making sense for the new generation chassis. And then you've got other sensible design touches that are big improvements as well. One thing that we've been focusing on for a long period of time is quality fan controls. And on 1155, we did a lot of really cool things. We had a lot of fan connectivity. So actually, if we take a look here, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but we can see that some of them were 3-pin. We had some 4-pin support. Our key focus was to at least give full manual control for the CPU fan and then for the chassis 1 fan. And that was already much better than most competitors, which usually were less fan headers, and you could generally only maybe turn them off or on. You didn't have a lot of manual control. For X79 being really an enthusiast-centric platform, every single board is at a minimum 6 fan headers, and they're all 4-pin. On top of that, we're also giving you a huge amount of control with 5 of those fan headers being able to be manually defined in terms of their operation. So, like in our chassis back here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fans that are all active, and we have them tweaked and tuned. As we can see right here, the system is really quiet because we've been able to adjust the rotational parameters of all of these, be able to set them up and kind of tweak and tune to our liking in terms of not only the sound, but also to the relative areas of performance. So that in itself is also, it's an ASUS distinctive point. That it's not just that, there's nothing in the chipset that defines that ability, but for us, as this being an enthusiast platform, we want to make sure that it's consistent across the board. So that's a hallmark in terms of the design implementation. Looking at some of the other ones, we've got standard things like USB 3, right? Yes. We had that on 1155. So we had front USB 3 and we had USB in the back. We were keeping a very similar philosophy. Every single one of the X79 boards has a minimum of 4 USB ports, with every board except for the standard board all also having a front header. So that's a big focus for us, that we wanted to be able to do that, but we also wanted to extend USB 3 performance. So every single one of the boards actually features USB 3 boost. So USB 3 boost is a pretty cool technology that we have actually on our boards that allows you to go ahead and, whether it's the front port or whether it's the back port, you're going to be able to actually switch the operation mode from what's referred to as BOT into either SCSI or the newest standard, which is UASP. So this can really help to extend the performance and the efficiency of any standard USB 2, USB 3 device that's plugging in those USB 3 ports, or if you have a UASP USB 3 device, really even push it significantly to faster speeds. Now, I'm assuming you probably have like an SSD in your system? Right?
Yes, sir.
Right, but I'm probably sure that you wish you had more capacity, right?
Yes. Definitely.
Right, so one of the kind of key things that you have also on Z68 that some users like is the Ssd Caching Support, right? Now that isn't natively supported within the actual X79 chipset. or the PCH. But here at ASUS, for a large number of our boards, Deluxe, Sabertooth, Pro, WS, all four of those boards all feature actually our ASUS SSD caching technology. So all the user has to do is just plug in the hard drive, the SSD to here, and they're able to take that benefit of getting the enhanced read performance, consistent write performance, improved boot performance, while getting the large capacity of their mechanical volume, but getting a lot of those key benefits from the SSD. Of course, for you, the die-hard enthusiasts, they can take advantage, of course, of the RAID configurations that are offered on the PCH. For the guys that want the fastest level of speed. But it's a nice option that we have that's also very easy to access. You don't have to go into the Uefi, there's no capacity limit. All you have to do is just have it connected, go into Windows and click a button, and that's it. So there's a lot of flexibility. Now, if we take a look at the back of the board, we'll see that actually on the back I/O, we've got one other kind of really big consistent hallmark for us, and we don't see it here. So we don't have a white port right here, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with our ROG series of boards. Right, and so one really cool feature that we had there was this USB BIOS flashback, and ROG has gone ahead and pioneered this feature, and now we have it across all of our X79 boards. But this allows you to go ahead and take a flash drive, put the ROM file on it, you rename it, you plug it in there, and you hold down that button. And once you hold down that button, without actually memory installed, CPU installed, or even graphics card, just standby power, just the actual EPS power. That's all that's required. You can actually low-level flash the motherboard. So you can update it really easy. So that when you're first setting up your system, if you want to update the Uefi, you don't need to do anything. Just plug it in there, hold it down, update it, you're good to go. This LED light will blink during the write process, and when it's done, it will stop blinking when you're set up. You're a bit of an overclocker?
Yeah, I'm pretty decent overclocker, and I see a lot of SI, system integrators, they got this particular feature because, sometimes they have to do a lot of orders, let's say 50 orders in one day, and it requires BIOS update before they ship out. Then this is a very, easy feature that they could just do BIOS update without putting all the components together, all the cabling together. You just have to need the particular, ATX motherboard power and CPU power, and that's it. And you just need that particular file.
Yeah, and for the overclockers that are out there, sometimes where people get too zealous in pushing a system, one of the other cool aspects that you're going to have is that the ROM file here, the chip actually can sometimes become corrupted.
Yes.
If it was to become corrupted and your system can't post, you would normally be stuck. You'd have to maybe RMA the board or request an actual ROM chip. But now with that USB BIOS flashback, we can attempt to low-level overwrite it and get your system back up and running.
So no more people have to RMA if they have a brick, they so-called brick BIOS updates.
Yep,
and you can basically
it.
recover from low-level BIOS updates.
So that's a key point for us also across all our X79 boards. Moving along with another key consistent design implementation is actually our Gigabit Lan here. As we can see right here, it says Intel Ethernet, and that's been a big commitment for us, is that we wanted to provide a higher class of network controller across all our boards. We're really adamant when we take back feedback from our users in the community, and we're really happy about making sure that across the entire series of boards, we're now featuring Intel Gigabit Lan. For our Deluxe board, it actually feels dual NICs, so we have one actually Realtek and one Intel. For our WS, it actually steps up to 2 Intel NICs, with one being the server grade L series NIC. So a really high-end option here for the people that are taking advantage of high-end network configurations, whether it's at home or whether it's in the business space. There's a lot of flexibility, but across the board you get that benefit of better performance, better compatibility, and the really high quality Intel driver, where you get options for advanced jumbo frame support, diagnostic tools, and a lot of really cool stuff that you only get when you're going with the Intel native. Plus it saves us on a PCIe lane, which is very cool because it once again allows us to maximize how many active devices you can keep on the board. So along with that, is one that we don't readily see on the board, but it's something that you experience in terms of when you're configuring the system, and that's our Uefi. I'm sure that I think you previously, when you adopted 1155, you remarked on how much smoother the Uefi was in terms of not only options but the layout.
Yes.
And we've definitely extended that now for the X79 platform. Every single one of the boards features Uefi, and we've added a couple of new options. Like we have a new shortcut interface.
Okay.
You can just hit the F3 key, and let's say it'll show like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different controls. All you have to do is click on that, and it'll take you straight to that portion of the Uefi, as opposed to having fan controls That's advanced, hardware monitor, and then fan controls.
Not many a lot of users, know the whole detail.
The whole detail, exactly.
That particular setting to change.
So it's like an easy table of contents where you can just hit that F3 option and navigate directly through. And a lot of those things that we're doing on our boards are about trying to make things easier. And that brings us to something that we've had for a couple of generations. We actually can see it lightly here. It says QLED for our DRAM LED, and this is actually a visual diagnostic system. On quite a number of our boards, we do actually have debug decode. The problem is not a lot of people fully understand what debug decode codes mean. So for QLED across all of our boards, starting from the standard board, they all feature this QLED diagnostic system, where you've got an LED for the DRAM, for the graphics card, for the CPU, and for the boot device. And if there's a potential diagnostic issue where the system doesn't post, they can look at the LED when they have it either installed in their system on their open test bed and know that's where it's causing me a problem. I can resolve that and get my system back up and running.
Basically, we use the downtime of troubleshooting your issue.
Exactly, because sometimes, somebody maybe doesn't have the manual, they don't know what 70 means, but that DRAM light, oh, okay, that's a memory-related issue. I maybe need to reseat it, maybe I need to run the mem-OK button, things along those lines. So we're very happy about being able to keep that consistent design element. And lastly, we've got a couple of, just standard things that just make sense, like there's a big focus for us with the dual intelligent processor design, which features TPU and EPU. All the boards feature TPU and EPU, so this gives us advanced auto overclocking capabilities, advanced monitoring abilities, and special options for like power efficiency, on all these boards, whether it's within the UEFI or if they're models that actually have the physical switches, you can go in and enable the optimal mode or just the TPU switch, and that'll take like your 3960X and take you from that stock frequency of 3.6 gigahertz across all 6 cores to 4.3 gigahertz in the flip of a switch or at the click of a button. So that's very cool in terms of being able to have that across all the boards. Our EPU switch is great for the stock users. Same thing in the UEFI for some of the boards that don't have the switch. You can go in there, you can click it, and it will run an older volt to your CPU, allows you to bring down the temperatures, reduce the power consumption. So there's a lot of overall kind of consistent design elements that we've featured into the boards, and we're really happy about maintaining. Other items too, where you've got like Bluetooth is a big focus point for us that we also had on our 1155 volts. I think you've got a smartphone too. It's nice to be able to have that ability to imagine, when you're troubleshooting a system, you could look at the debug code, right? Which half the time, once inside the chassis, can you see that? No. But or being able to clear the CMOS, so you can do a lot of things with our advanced actual application. Then once it hooks into the BT module, you could do that. You could start off, you can start the computer, you could shut it off, you could monitor temperatures, or you can do the more realistic applications where you could just do easy synchronization of contacts. You could do internet tethering. There's a lot of cool options that we have that are built into our BT Go, where the Pro, the Deluxe, even the Rampage actually feature these BT module implementations. So a lot of really cool consistent points that we have actually present on our board that we feel are really helping to extend not only the usability but the functionality of the platform. And lastly, I think one of the biggest aspects for us is really this once again, that hallmark of the digital power design. I think that matched with our UEFI really helps to have a strong level of actually overclocking potential across our entire boards. I'm sure with you and the system integrators, there's always, which board do you go with, right? From the concern or perspective is one going to be better at overclocking than another one? I kind of want to be able to hit this, but thankfully, because we're using this consistent digital power design and we've got these matched UEFI builds, the experience generally across all the boards is going to be about the same. Definitely, the Deluxe, Sabertooth, WS, the Rampage boards, as you go up in the stack, they have, especially, a couple more customized options, like in the R4E, it's really the most advanced tweakable board out there, so you can probably push it a little bit further because we're even using more advanced components on there. But as a whole, every single one of these boards can do 4.8 gigahertz.
Yeah, so similar to how we have LG.
Exactly, and that's about a usability experience. You're 100% right. We don't want to kind of artificially limit you that just because you bought the Pro board, you're not going to be able to get the performance out of what you got from the WS or the R4E, right? We want it to be that yes, there's going to be differentials in terms of the specs. For here we've got 4-way support, and on the Pro maybe you're only getting 3-way support plus some of the other segmentational differences. But the overall performance attributes, the overclockability, and the parameters that you can define, they're all going to be available to you. So it really just comes down to, can you make sure to effectively cool the CPU, and be able to define having the right parts for your system that can keep up with what you're trying to push for, right? So that's an important part. And just make those secondary considerations, like Pro, it's a fantastic board, as you can see here, but maybe if you're looking at the Deluxe, you want the more advanced, robust heatsink, you're going to get an even larger heatsink, right? With actually an additional finning to even be able to give you more heat dissipation, right? So those things kind of keep in mind. So that gives us, I think, a little bit of an overall perspective on some of the actual outliers that we have on our X79 series of boards. For you guys out there, if you guys ever, of course, have any questions or comments, concern about our boards, definitely make sure to check out our ASUS overviews and unboxings that we have for each one of the boards in the lineup. You can also make sure to visit us at our ASUS ROG forums. And if you want, drop us a question there. You'll find me, ASUS Illuminati, in there. Maybe we'll find Fumi on there.
Yeah, maybe.
And we'll do our best to make sure to clarify any points for you. As always, thanks for watching.